Have we got the slide? Yeah, all good. Hey everyone. I was here 3 years ago at KBW, and I remember very distinctly we had like a 2-hour session on stablecoins, which is in the sort of side room, not even connected to the main stage. And I think it's just a pretty incredible thing to see that now we have entire sort of events put around stablecoins as an idea and asset class. And I think it's, just sort of shows how far we've sort of come in the last few years in terms of the interest within this product sector. So incredibly excited to be here today to talk about what we're up to at Ethena. We're going to give a very quick recap in terms of what we do as a business, sort of the journey to date that we've had, and then some of the ways that we're sort of thinking about growth going forward. So we'll just jump into it now. For those of you that don't know, the genesis story behind Ethena came from like an article that Arthur Hayes put out around 2.5 years ago now in 2023, and that article was called Dust on Crust. In that article, he described what he viewed as one of the largest opportunities within crypto, which was, can we create our own form of money, i.e. money that was untethered to the banking system? And we sort of recognized the importance of dollar assets within crypto. It's kind of like the lifeblood of trading. Everything's sort of quoted against dollars. Dollars are sort of the structural plumbing that underpins all of DeFi, but we didn't have our own native form of money. And his idea was to use crypto assets with derivatives to create a dollar-pegged asset that didn't sort of rely on banking infrastructure like normal fiat stablecoins. So the background behind Ethena was I read that blog post, agreed with Arthur that we thought it was a pretty big idea, and then basically quit my job like a week later to start building Ethena on the back of that idea. And the product and business has evolved quite a bit since then in terms of different product lines that we brought out. But that was really the core product that sat behind USDe. And so for those that don't know, the core product itself essentially uses what's known as like a delta neutral mechanism to back the asset. And all you're doing is taking in crypto collateral on one side and then hedging the same notional exposure with derivatives, and that allows you to issue a dollar asset against it. The interesting byproduct of that is that you capture what's known as a funding rate within crypto. So there's a really large derivative market that exists around these assets, and very interesting interest rates that are produced. So anywhere between 10 to 20% annualized on $120 to $150 billion of open interest. So it's really one of the largest markets that exists within crypto. If you take a step back and just ask yourself, what are the 3 areas that you can produce $10 billion annualized of cash flow? There's only really 3 things in the space, and it's Binance equity, Tether equity, and then the derivative market that sits around crypto. So to us, that just felt like a very big opportunity, and being able to go and tokenize that form of cash flow in a dollar asset was sort of the form factor that we thought made the most sense. The current product set and sort of future product sets that sit around Ethena, I sort of touched on USDe. The second product that we brought out was called USDTB, and that you can think about as a very simple fiat stablecoin that's backed by BlackRock's BUIDL fund. So Ethena is the largest holder of the BUIDL fund that sits on chain now. And the view that we had was that we wanted to provide a full suite of products for users. We understand that users don't always want something that looks different in terms of its risk construction like USDe, and being able to provide the full suite of dollar products was something that we wanted to be able to do. So we have the first core product, which is scaled from 0 to just under $15 billion of supply in 18 months, and then USDTV, which is a bit smaller at around $2 billion. And that's sort of the 2 core products that we have and have sort of built out in the last 18 months. One piece that's sort of become quite in topic recently, and I think is something that we're incredibly excited about, is this idea of a stablecoin as a service or white label offering. So for those of you that have been tracking, we had an announcement out with MegaETH around 2 weeks ago, where we're going to be powering like the native stablecoins on MegaETH's chain. I think that this is going to become an incredibly large and important theme across the entire space. Some of you may have seen Hyperliquid came out with a proposal to basically launch a native stablecoin on Hyperliquid called USDH. And there's a very large sort of proposal where most of the large issuers came to pitch to do that. And I think that this has actually been a pretty pivotal moment within the space, where every single large app, wallet, chain that thinks that they have distribution and that they own the user is now taking a step back and saying, how do we sort of do something that looks similar to internalize some of the economics that come out of these products and then redistribute them to users on the other side. So the announcement that we had with MegaETH is kind of just the first step over here. And I think this is actually the area that we're most excited about in terms of the forward growth profile for what we want to do. what I can share is that I think we've spoken to every single large top 10 app chain wallet in the last 2 weeks, and I'd be surprised if less than 90% of those entities don't have their own native stablecoin within the next sort of 2 to 3 months. So this, I think, is going to be the biggest theme in stablecoins coming up, and I think that Ethena is sort of pretty uniquely positioned to actually provide that back-end infrastructure for this theme. In addition to that, big areas for growth that we're excited about, we have USDe, which you can really think about as like an institutional version of what we're doing with USDe. We've really thought about the growth and sort of phased delivery of our products as starting within DeFi, moving into CeFi, and then TradFi was really like the end game of where we wanted to bring the product. I think the view that we had was we've had incredible tailwinds this cycle around institutional flows of capital coming into the space, but it's really only benefited 2 different things. You've seen Bitcoin ETFs become huge beneficiaries of flows that have come into the space. Stablecoins, so obviously Tether and Circle supply up materially from where they were in the peaks in 2021. But if you look at DeFi TBL, it didn't even break the peak that we saw in 2021, despite the fact that metrics around Bitcoin and stablecoins are up enormously. And so we took a step back and asked ourselves the question, why is it that actually DeFi is sort of lagging behind everything else that's going on in the space? And I think the view that we have is that it's not good enough to sort of produce these products and just expect that TradFi is going to turn up and start using them. You have to go and actually deliver them in a format that makes sense and is digestible by TradFi. So this is really just an initiative where you can think about the whole fixed income universe that exists within TradFi, hundreds of trillions of dollars. It is pretty interesting to be able to deliver a dollar with a yield to those entities, whether you're an asset manager, credit fund, hedge fund, whether it's in an ETF, ETP, the demand for like a dollar with a yield isn't $15 billion that we're sitting at right now. That number's in literally the hundreds of billions to trillions. And that's an initiative for us to go and deliver that product within TradFi. And I think 2 other really exciting pieces that are sort of being built on Ethena. These are separate exchanges that are coming to market relatively soon. I think the view that we have is that there's really 2 killer products within crypto. You have a dollar-based savings account or like a dollar-based yield-bearing stablecoin. And then perps trading is kind of the other place that you see extreme product market fit so far. And when you put those 2 things together, I think you create a very interesting product, which is like the 2 things that interest users the most, having them in the same place, where whenever you're trading on an exchange, you're collecting yield on your collateral. To us, that's one of the most powerful use cases of what you can actually unlock to create a better user experience on perp trading right now. So there's one team who's building front end on Hyperliquid's HIP3, which we don't know when that's coming out, but that's sort of coming to market relatively soon. And we're pretty excited about the growth profile that has ahead of us. And then another team called Ethereal, who's again taking USDe and then building an entire exchange around that. Just to sort of recap like a few of the growth metrics that we've had to date. So Ethena sort of established itself now, I think, really at the core and like beating heart of EVM DeFi. Some of the metrics, I think around 60% of the TVL that sits within Pendle is actually Ethena products. In terms of dollar assets that are sitting on Aave, that's grown to north of $6 billion on Aave, Ethena's product, so it's actually larger than USDT and USDC within the largest money market in the space. And then during different periods of its lifetime, Ethena's contributed anywhere between 25 to 50% of the revenues that are generated within Sky. So really like the largest DeFi applications now rely on USD and the return profile that's generated in there to sort of build better products themselves. And that's, I guess the first step that we had, which was thinking about DeFi. And then CeFi was really like the next leg of growth that we really nailed into. And the same sort of thesis that I was sharing around why we think exchanges being built on USD was a core killer use case. We've started to see the same thing emerge where USD on Binance, Bybit, and different centralized exchanges has started to grow into the billions, where you can essentially trade perhaps with a product that's actually paying you on the collateral side. Some of the key metrics over there grew to around 16 billion across both of the products in around 18 months. It was the second fastest application that grew to $100 million of revenue just behind Pump Fun. And I can't read the rest of the bullet points that are there, but they're up there for you. There's just a bit of a chart there of the sort of relative growth for USDe versus Tether and Circle. And then equally, some of the revenue figures that we sort of generated in the same period of time, sort of crossing the $500 million gross interest revenue number just last month. So I think this is kind of our favorite chart that we look at internally within Ethena, which is kind of just laying out what are the big opportunities for us to go and increase the scale of what we're doing. So a lot of this is just thinking about existing opportunities that we have right now, just doing a bit more of that. So that's sort of the ideas that you see on the left, which is pushing some of the ideas within DeFi a bit harder. Some of you might have seen the announcement that we had out with Telegram, which is another area that we're pretty excited about, where you can go into your Telegram application right now. If you type in wallet, there's like a $1 savings area that's sitting in there at the moment. And it's just like a one-click experience and you're getting a yield within your Telegram application. Obviously for us, it's pretty exciting to think about the user numbers that are sitting on Telegram. So around 1 billion users are sitting in there at the moment. And for us, this is really like the next step of crypto isn't just creating crypto products and sitting around and hoping that people turn up and use them. It's actually going to meet users in existing distribution platforms that they're already using and seeing how your product can sort of enhance that experience sitting in the background. So anyone who hasn't tried the Telegram application, I do encourage you to have a look at that, and I think that that can be extended far beyond just sitting with Telegram. Any messaging app, any fintech, Web2 front end that's sitting there and wants to offer like a $1 savings product, Ethena is pretty well positioned to sit in the background and provide that infrastructure for them. And then, yeah, I think we touched on some of the centralized exchanges and exchanges being built on chain, which again, we see as pretty big dollar demand sinks. And then the stablecoin as a service products that we mentioned earlier there, I think we're probably understating the size of how big that can get, and I think it's going to be one of the most important themes coming forward. So I remember sitting here maybe a year and a half ago, and we had the same chart. I think the number was like 3 billion, and then we did like a chart to 10, and that was like the walk that we did, and I think there were some people sort of laughing when we put that forward, and I was getting the same sort of reaction internally when we're sort of putting this forward now with the numbers that are sitting here, but it feels we sort of reached that level of escape velocity, and we sort of feel that the size of opportunity that sits ahead of us now, people are broadly starting to recognize this, like across the space within stablecoins. I think people are talking about numbers that are sort of, $3 trillion in the next 3 to 5 years, and I think that's pretty consistent with the way that we view where the space is going, and couldn't be more excited to be building within the space and sort of contributing to that. So, thanks for the time.